There we go. Officially recording Two Old Pucks podcast.
Yeah, one of us is older than the other, though, so let's just make sure we keep that in mind.
um, I don't know who you're referring to there, but all right. So, do we talk about the elephant in the room? Like, I know how much you would love to talk about Islanders hockey and ninth straight win at Buffalo.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that.
Brassard scoring in his fifth straight game on the wing.
Brassard's an interesting subject. So he was run out of town in Pittsburgh last year. It's
I know.
basically a throwaway to the Florida Panthers. Um, he when he was with the Rangers, and then when he was with Pittsburgh, the expectation was he was going to jump in and maybe be a third line center, kind of generate some offense, play a little defensively, but he just never fit in. And I think in his time with the Rangers, it's interesting because he always saw himself as a second line center, and obviously that doesn't make sense in Pittsburgh. You got Crosby and Malkin, so I guess it's good to see a resurgence there. But I got to tell you, just having watched him last season, he had some spurts, but I think that's going to dry up pretty quick, to be honest with you.
You know, it's funny because as much as I think I followed him more from a fantasy perspective than from watching him on TV perspective. And I know from a fantasy perspective, he was a guy that was like when all was said and done with your draft, he was one of those guys, one of the better guys that was remaining that kind of was on that bubble that you would pick up and throw in at some point in the season because he would have a spurt and he would have be leading or doing well with a couple categories, and he was one of those guys you'd always pick on. Okay, yeah, let me drop this guy and add Brassard, and I remember over the years he made it onto my team quite a few times, and I drop him or I hold him for periods of time, but I know it was those decisions were always based on consistency. So I never really much followed on what line he was playing, who he was playing with, but I know that he just went through spurts, and I think those spurts were aligned, however, with what line he was on and who he was playing with. I just wasn't paying attention to it. Although I do pay attention prior to picking up a player, what line they are currently on, and then make a decision on that.
Sure. There's always the NHL nowadays is based on it's not actually the three players that are on a line. It's two players that play together, and then there's a winger that's thrown in to kind of complement. And you'll find that on pretty much any team,
Right.
even during All-Star games or World Cup of Hockey, where coaches will do their best to put a center and a wing that are always together, and then they basically can throw another guy on there. So certainly, you'll get those players, and for Brassard, he's just not a hard guy to go into the corner, right? He kind of plays in the periphery.
Yeah.
He's not a fierce back checker, but you put somebody defensively responsible on one side, you put somebody that'll go into the corners, dig the puck out and feed him. He's not a bad offensive player. He's not. He can handle the puck. Obviously, he's putting points up this season. So it's really just like you said. It's a matter of who he gets partnered up with that really determines how well he's going to play. But we see that all over the NHL, right? Like you see that on a number of teams where you have somebody that's just this great offensive talent, but they don't play defense.
Right.
And so what does a coach do with that, right? Like, do you sacrifice defense to score goals? I mean, so really, again, if Barry Trotz is able to um, pull that out of him, good for him. I hope it keeps up.
Yeah. Well, obviously something's clicking there. He's working with Beauvillier, and he's doing pretty well. It's interesting. When he came onto the team, there was that. It's almost like the standard statement you hear from a player that they're looking to, you know, find a new home and really get back to playing the hockey they know they can play, and really developing a chemistry with the guys, and really kind of reinventing their game, and doing well. So listen, as well as it sounds and as good as it sounds, you always hope that it works out for a guy. Um, for now, it seems like something's working, and I guess it's, and as you touched on with Barry, we can carry that over to the goalkeepers. I mean, look at Varlamov now, right? A shutout, 5 straight wins, right? For him, 4 straight wins for Grice. Grice has been solid, but I think there's something to be said for as far as a player reinventing themselves, because now you find a guy like Brassard who's doing well. Albeit it's 5 games, right? But you look at Lerner last year, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Leonard last year, right? I feel like Butch Goring, Lerner. But Leonard last year, and Varlamov, all signs are pointing that he's gonna be strong for us. May not have the same year as Leonard, but there are some strong indicators there that he's off to the right start. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Varlamov didn't have a single shutout all last year, and now it is. He just had one now. So
Yeah. And the thing is, for many years, Buffalo has been a basement dweller.
right,
Guys just haven't wanted to go there, and so, certainly it's I hate taking one game and using that as the sample size, right? Like, you really have to stretch it out, and so I
right.
say that because I think Varlamov has really.
I'm taking 5 games though.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's what I was
Yeah,
about to say. I mean, I think he's really established himself. So, getting the shutout today against Buffalo, Buffalo's, I'd say they started off really successful early in the season. I mean, we're only a month in.
right.
Everybody's, oh man, they're going to make the playoffs this year. I'm not ready to drink that Kool-Aid yet. But
Right.
certainly they're not a basement dweller. I mean, they've got some talent there. So there's definitely something to be said for that. And it was a hard fought game because what was it? It was 1-0, right? I mean, that was the final score.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So certainly was hard fought. So it's good, right? Like, it's a good win. It's a good win for the team. It's a good win for the goalie. It's a good win for the players. Yeah, I mean, it's what you want.
Yeah.
It's what you want. So
Obviously, I just happen to have an Islanders shirt on with an Islanders background, so I don't want to make this the Islanders news jam here. But if I unless there's something specific, I was just going to glance through some of the top stories from today.
Well, so here's a big story today. So today was McDavid versus Crosby, right?
Yep.
So it was a matchup. It was 1:00 in the afternoon. So one of the first things I want to say is I want to call I want to throw the BS flag on the NHL, on NBC, on any network that had potential to carry this as a nationally televised game. This was nationally televised in Canada, but here in the States, you don't have the pay-per-view package, whatever that is. You're not watching it, and it's a shame because this was a matchup of two of the best players in the NHL going head to head today. So it came out. The game went to overtime. It came out, it was 2-1 Edmonton. One of the biggest things to take away today, or two of the biggest things to take away for today, was Pittsburgh put 52 shots on Edmonton's Mike Smith. and he turned away 51 out of 52. Now, Mike Smith's been in the league for a long time. I watched him play in Tampa, so the local Norfolk affiliate here. When they were in the AHL, the Admirals, they were affiliate of Tampa, and actually got to meet Mike Smith when he was sent down for some conditioning. The dude is huge. A dude I think is 9-10 feet tall. He covers a lot of net, but he is a good goaltender. He was plagued by some knee injuries, so he got moved. He played for a little bit in Dallas, and now he's in Edmonton. And today he played really well. And it wasn't, you might see shots on goal, being run up, but they're low percentage shots, right? Today were some really good scoring chances. So 52 shots on goal, Mike Smith turns away 51 out of 52. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Pittsburgh, with all of its high-powered offensive players, Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, Letang, Malkin, 0 for 5 on the power play. These guys are 0 for the century over the past, several games. The 5-on-5 play was great. McDavid, I think, got 1 shot on goal today. Crosby got 1. So those lines played against each other for a long time. So really good. Those two lines, those two players really negated each other. Draisaitl, he ended up scoring the game winner. It was 3-on-3. Some of the best back and forth overtime action I've seen in a long time. But really, Pittsburgh had several opportunities to really take control of the game today, and went 0 for 5. And I got to tell you, as a Pittsburgh fan, the team that I follow the most, I mean, that's pretty disheartening, especially, getting Malkin back today after being out for pretty much the entire season with an injury. Was supposed to inject some life into the power play, but that's just not going to win games. 5 opportunities and didn't score on any of them, especially with the talent that they have. So the players are gripping their sticks. They're trying to make pretty passes. It's something that they've worked on in practice, something they're going to have to continue to work on. But anytime any team gets those opportunities on the power play, especially against another talented team, they've got to score. They've got to score when they get those chances. Yeah. Some games you get a couple. Some games you get 5. It doesn't matter. You got to put the puck in the net. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, especially with Malkin's return. I think there's going to be a trade coming out of Pittsburgh. They've got a lot of they've got a lot of depth. In fact, too much. They've had to scratch some guys that would probably be in the lineup on any other team in the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But hats off to Mike Smith today. He stood on his head, gave Edmonton that win, and Edmonton is not a basement dweller anymore. So, kind of branching off from that, it's interesting. A lot of people will tell you that games in October and November really don't matter. It's all about what happens in the spring, right? Like that, making that last push for the playoffs. Well, I can tell you from watching the NHL for years and years and watching teams, they get to the end of the season, they might be 2 or 3 points out of a playoff spot, looking back and wishing they had won those 1-goal games, wishing they had put the puck in the net on any number of those power plays that they gave up on. So, every game is important, despite the fact there's 82, and you got to take points wherever you can get them. So, yeah, that's the game I watched earlier today. It was a good game, but man, 5 power play chances and you don't score on any of them. That's not good.
That's a stat that definitely stands out.
Yeah.
I have it up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
The stats from that game. But you touched on the depth of players that Pittsburgh has and potential trades. You feel something might be brewing there. There was word maybe about 2 weeks ago of Pittsburgh inquiring about Hosang. I don't know. Never heard. There was one report that bubbled up, disappeared, and that's it.
Yeah, Pittsburgh has been good for some reclamation projects. So Justin Schultz coming from the Edmonton Oilers is one example. Jack Johnson coming from Columbus. Jack Johnson was basically, John Tortorella, who is he's definitely his own man. We've watched him in New York, watched him in Tampa. He's definitely got his ways. He basically chased Jack Johnson out of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh overpaid for him, but he's there. So certainly Pittsburgh is not adverse to reclamation projects. Something we talked about earlier this week is, I just really don't understand why Ho-Sang is not being given an opportunity on the island. I don't understand that.
It was always said that the coaches weren't happy with his two-way play, and that he was inconsistent with some passes and so on. You heard different things, but from a fan standpoint, I think the fans took to him because he was a kid who played with confidence, and whether his decision making, yes, could be questionable at times. He was always looking to make something happen, and that's what the fans loved. And in trying to make things happen, sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. And due to that fact, that's it's like the Babe Ruth, the Babe Ruth style of play. He led the league in home runs, but also led the league in strikeouts. So, but Babe Ruth played in the majors, and he became very popular. Now, coaches are maybe not too fond of that, and hockey has become a very statistical, percentage-based type of game, and play is analyzed in that fashion. So, although I know Ho-Sang did make the argument about the games that he did play and the points he did put up on the board were acceptable. I think there were still those were points that were put up in games maybe that some they won, some they lost, and then you look at plus minus and so on, and obviously that's a questionable stat in itself. But listen, you could say this. It sounds like something that's not too far-fetched that could not be applied to any player coming out of the minors trying to make it big, and you could analyze it and slice and dice it. But I think there was some history there with the coaches, and with some things that could be justified. Ho-Sang could be justified for feeling or thinking, and others he couldn't. I mean, he did kind of shoot himself in the foot by not performing up to a major league team standards as far as preseason and practice schedules and showing up on time and so on. So he's been known to be maybe a little inconsistent with that. But then once you get into a season, you start to see him perform. Who knows? Who knows what happened behind closed doors with that one? All we know, though, is that due to injuries and scratches on the Islanders roster, players from Bridgeport are getting pulled up left and right. And he should absolutely have been one of those players in recent weeks that should have had a call up, but because 3 weeks ago he openly mentioned that he wanted to be traded, Lou asked him to sit out and take a break until they can work that out for him. So once again, shot himself in the foot. Whether Lou's right for taking that stand with him or not, it seems like there's a motive there for Lou to take that stand. But I don't know. It seems a shame. It seems like it's a shame, and that if that's the stand, if that Lou's going to take, or any GM would take, or any owner would take, or any coach would take, then it seems like Ho-Sang's time is done here. He's got one way or the other. He has to go find an opportunity elsewhere. I mean, you only live once. You're only going to have a shot once at this, and I kind of feel for the kid in that sense that he needs a bigger taste of the big time than what he's been given to this point, and let the fans, let the coaches feel, and determine whether or not he deserves that big time or not.
Yeah, I just look at this even from a GM perspective. We kind of talked about this a little earlier. Was he's taking up a roster spot. He's there's a limited number of contracts, and so the idea that you have a guy who is taking up a contract that somebody else could take, and you're not using him at all. And he asked for a trade, and maybe Lou's mad that it was discussed in the media, out in public, and certainly there could be something said for, I guess, maybe Lou making a point, but again, there's guys waiting to play. There's guys looking for contracts. There's guys that are hungry. There's guys that'll play. So, my thing is, make the trade. So even if you're not looking to bring another player in, get a draft pick, get something. There are teams out there that certainly could use a player like Hosang. And again, even on the AHL, if you're telling them not to show up, not to dress, don't bother playing, you're really taking away from the other guys in your system that you're trying to develop. Right. Because there you have a premium talent that you're not putting on the ice to help those other guys really elevate their game and play to that level. So it's just it's interesting. Lou's an interesting character. You listen to some of the older Devils players who aren't playing anymore, who retired, and they'll tell you that Lou would always stick his neck out for his guys, but you kept your mouth shut. You did it his way or no way, and he would give you the business. Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I'm of the opinion that maybe his time has come and gone in today's NHL. Right. But we'll see. I think Trotz, can make up for maybe the oversight of Lou. A lot of coaches nowadays are able to do that. They can make up for a GM who's not necessarily made some good roster decisions. But ultimately, again, that's an asset that you have that you're not using, and that's, to me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Right. So.
Winston through here. Let's see. We got Maple Leafs defeat Flyers today. An 11-round shootout.
So Tavares has been out. I didn't see. Did he come back and play today?
You know what? I don't believe he did. And it's rare for him to be out. He must have definitely jammed up that hand pretty good. But
so that's the Maple Leafs are another interesting.
The score sheet as you're talking. I'm going to pull up the score sheet.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs are another interesting team. They obviously that's the creme de la creme. That's Canada's team. You have the Canadians, you have the Maple Leafs. And there's such high expectations for that Maple Leafs team, and I actually think they're on the decline despite all the moves that they've made. And, despite bringing Tavares in, I think Mike Babcock, who at one time was probably the best coach in the NHL, I think he may be another guy that's kind of run his course. And so I think fans are going to be disappointed this year. Maple Leafs fans are going to be disappointed this year, and I think they're going to end up taking a step back.
Yeah, Tavares did not play.
Yeah.
Tavares did not play. We have goals on Toronto's end by Kapanen, Spezza, and then Mitch Marner.
So Mitch Marner, yeah, I mean he's a young guy that Toronto is definitely they're very lucky to have. There's a lot of talent on the Maple Leafs team. It's just the way that they're being employed, and it could be again, that Babcock has kind of lost his
lost his voice on that team. So, it's still early in the season. There's still time to turn that around, but they just haven't performed to the level that you would think they would, right? Like for a team that has the Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Frederick Anderson, again, saw him play here in Norfolk, make his way through the Ducks organization, make his way over to Toronto. For having those those kinds of players. Again, you mentioned Kapanen as a goal scorer today. I mean, they should be doing a lot better than 7-5. And again, to go to an overtime game against Philadelphia, who got the snot kicked out of them earlier this week by Pittsburgh. I mean, it was 7-1.
Yeah.
I mean, Philadelphia's not a good team. They're not even. They're not bullies. They're not. They're just not good. So.
Yeah. I'm looking here because I wanted to. I thought of something I definitely wanted to touch on as we're talking here, which is, and I'll pull it up right now, which is the Rangers.
Okay.
And the reason why I want to bring it up is because, when you go through an off season and you hear the name Panarin every day, 10 times a day, for the entire summer, as far as where he's going to sign. And it comes down to, one of the last final teams was Rangers, Islanders, and I forget who else was in the mix. I think there was one more team in the mix.
Florida. Yep.
That's right, Florida. He goes to the Rangers, and when you look at the Rangers roster, right, and they have Kako, right? They have Bushnevich, Fast, Kreider, Ryan Strome. They got Trouba, right? And Georgiev, who is proven to be a very solid goalie, who is up and coming. I think this guy's on the right path, and he looks scary at times, like scary good at times. I'm not sure why this team isn't playing better than what they are. And as an Islander fan, obviously I'm glad they're not doing well.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
As a hockey fan, and you look at this and you think, okay, what else do the Rangers need?
So, the issue with the Rangers is that they've done a rebuild on the fly, and let's be honest, they a team that wants to do a rebuild, they usually burn to the ground and start from scratch. The Rangers, of course, they've got money. It's a place where players they want to go to play. You still have Lundqvist, between the pipes, and any player would be happy to play in front of him. And again, that's Panarin. When you get a guy who was so integral for Nashville, Columbus. Excuse me, Columbus. When he was so integral to that team, and he was such a big part of that team, and he generated so much for that team. And then he chose to go to New York. I mean, that's got to say something. I mean, the culture is there, the players are there, and really what I think it boils down to, though, is you've got a lot of youth on that team.
There is, but here's the thing, and not to interrupt you.
No, right? Go ahead. Yeah.
There's youth, and then there's like youth, right? Yep. How many strong veteran leaders are on this Rangers team? Other than Lundqvist, nobody.
Well, you've got Kreider. You've got Chris Kreider.
Okay.
And you've got.
But here, look at it this way. Let me, and I just for example, because the Rangers and the Islanders were in Panarin's final choice, right?
Sure. Yep.
You have Boychuk and Leddy, right? And so you got a cup winner, and then you also have Trotz, a cup winner, right? So there's some strong leadership on that team already. And then you see what the Islanders did under a full season with Trotz. And then you look at the deep young talent pool that the Islanders also have, especially when you have a guy like Barzal that has really shown what he can do over the last year or two, right? Now, like in my mind, what is it specifically about the team, the Rangers team, that a guy like Panarin, who went from Blackhawks to Columbus to the Rangers, would choose the Rangers with not a lot of veteran leadership and some real rookie players. But then you look at what's in the locker room on the Islanders, and you have that diversity, you have that leadership that goes all the way up to the coaching and to the management. It's like cup winner after cup winner after cup winner.
So if I have to go back and look, but I think New York ended up outspending, or the Rangers ended up outspending the Islanders. I think that was
Well, I
all they would
think,
have rolled down to.
yeah,
Um,
I
but
think he actually took a less. I think he took a little bit less with the
less.
Rangers.
It could be. Like I said, I have to go back and look. I know that that's why he was looking more north than south, because
Right.
I don't think Florida was willing to pay him. But it could be any number of things, right? Like it could have been Lou. It could have been the way that Panarin wanted to be used on the team. So you get players who want the puck. And so when you have a locker room full of players who just, you rattled off all those names that are sitting in the Islanders locker room. If Panarin went there and thought, hey, I'm going to be a second line guy. I don't want to be a second line guy. I'm going to be, I'm not going to get the opportunity to kind of play as much. I mean, there could be any number of reasons.
Listen, this is another guy with a cup, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so Panarin's another guy with a cup, right? Okay. Do you think, in all seriousness,
Yeah.
do you think that the guys who are younger on the Islanders team that are playing on the top line are going to say boo to acquiring a guy like Panarin, letting him play that top line, them sliding back to the second line and having a much deeper team?
Well, remember, it's not a democracy, so the players don't get to make those choices.
But you know what I'm saying. I know
No,
they don't make the
I
choice,
do.
but do you,
I
like,
understand.
do you think there's going to be resentment in the locker room about a decision like that?
No. I don't think there's
Yeah.
any resentment. That has nothing. So the players aren't going to see that at all. What I'm talking about is how Panarin would see his role, and it could have been when he had discussions with Lou. It could have been when he had discussions with Trotz, that maybe he didn't like kind of what he was hearing.
Right.
Maybe his role when he got there was not going to be what he envisioned his role should be. And so when you look at a team like the Rangers, though, again, he goes there, and as you pointed out, right, like there's a lot of youth there. But again, you've got Jesper Fast, you've got Chris Kreider, you've got Greg McKegg up forward. You've got some guys that are right around the same age as Panarin, and they're really the Ryan Strome again is another one. Same thing with Mike Zibanejad. Those guys are right around the same age, and then it kind of drops off. Capo Keiko is a young guy, so again, it could be where Panarin and his agent thought he was going to best fit in the lineup, that was going to complement his play. Because again, remember, you may have a gluttony of right wings on a team, right? Already, there's already a bunch of right wings, right? And so if Panarin talked to Lou, again, we weren't there in the room, but if Panarin talked to Lou and Lou was like, "Hey, we want to play you on the off wing," and he's like, I'm not good on the off wing, or something along those lines, right?
I think the thought here is, and once again, I don't want to steer this back into an Islanders sort of thought. I'm thinking though, and I used maybe the Islanders as the example, but what is it that Panarin possibly saw in the Rangers to pick that team made up of that roster to make that his home, when he knows that this team has no chemistry because they're a lot of young guys. They need to find their way. It's almost like he took the money knowing that there's going to be a rebuild that's going to take time, and it's going to be a long time before they have a shot. But yet, if you look at the Islanders, who are finding their feet, and once again, I don't want to make this, I'm just using the example only
No,
because they were in the
a good
final
example.
two of the decision.
No, it's a good example. Again, it could be his role. Maybe he wanted to go there and take a leadership role where he may not have seen that being able to be in place on the island. So there's players that do that. There's players that will look for teams that are going to invest in their future, right? Because the Rangers right now, the Rangers aren't building to win now. Like we know that. Like it's just not something that they're doing, right? They've let their fans know, and I think just even looking at the roster, people in the city know that the Rangers aren't going in for the cup, within the next 3 or 4 years at the very least. So maybe Panarin went there looking at a place where he could make it his longtime home, looking at an opportunity for him to lead, to take a leadership role, but knowing that there's a new coach, that there's an investment really in the future, and that this is a team that is going to build around him, as opposed to the Islanders, who really aren't going to build around him. They don't need to build around him. They have other players there that they can build around, and so that factors into players' decisions. That's actually, I mean, that is an absolute tangible reason why players make the decisions that they do.
Obviously, the Islanders offered him what they offered him because they were going to build around him.
Well, were they going to build around him, or were they going to incorporate him into their plans? So again, does the system
that Panarin, I really wouldn't. Would you really care when you're getting paid that money and you know you're going to a solid team and it's almost like you're guaranteed success?
Some players do. Why did Sidney Crosby take a discount? Why is he getting paid less than Connor McDavid or Jonathan Toews? He took that discount. Why? Because he wanted to ensure that Pittsburgh was able to be competitive. There are guys that do that. They aren't looking for that max payday. He did that because it was an investment in the team. He knew that Pittsburgh was going to take that money and be able to apply it to other players. Same thing with Jake Gensel. Jake Gensel scored 40 goals last year, right? I mean, like he was a big name in the NHL, right? And again, Pittsburgh just happens to be one of those teams that has a gluttony of talent. So I'm not trying to focus specifically on them, but Gensel is a steal. His contract is peanuts compared to what other guys with similar resumes are doing. So
yeah, but when did he sign that? When did he last sign a contract?
2 years ago, I think.
Okay, but that was before he hit his stride.
Yeah, but he won 2 cups, right? Like, so again, you look at Panarin, you say, oh, Panarin won a cup, right? Last year, or with Columbus, they finally won a playoff round. I mean, they were on their way up, but again, hockey is a business, right? Hockey definitely is a business, and players do their best to ensure their longevity. They do their best to ensure that they're going to get paid. They're going to be able to maximize on their paychecks. But I got to tell you, they're a different breed when it comes to their decisions on where they go, right? Phil Kessel, for instance, right? Phil Kessel, big name, like Boston, Toronto, Pittsburgh, right? Like, he wore out his welcome in Pittsburgh. So where is he playing now?
Coyotes.
Yeah, he's playing for Arizona. Yep. Who in their right mind thinks Arizona is going to go for a cup?
Okay, but was that part of free agency?
No, that was a trade.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He didn't have a choice there.
No, but he did. He had a no trade clause.
But
he had a no trade clause.
Was Arizona one of those teams that was part of his no trade?
So he was able to.
Did he waive that? Did he waive that to go there?
He was in his contract that he was able to give a list of 10 teams that he was willing to go to. He vetoed a trade to Minnesota that Pittsburgh had worked out before, right? So again, players, you never know what their motivation is. But he went to Arizona, and he's not done very well there, and Arizona's not doing very well there. But he liked the coach. He liked Rick Tocchet, and that was one of the things that factored into his decision. So again,
I keep thinking that the motivating factor for the players, and I understand what you're saying, I'm not disagreeing with it, But as an athlete myself, I would always make a decision based on what's going to put me in the best position to win and succeed with my team.
So that's true, but
That's just me, and I just assume, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, the fact that there are other athletes that work their ass off their entire careers and choose to make decisions not like that.
I mean, but think about it, like each athlete has a different measure of success. So as a fan who's watching, the measure of success is winning championships, right? It could be winning scoring titles, it could be anything, but it's having something tangible at the end. It's having that trophy, having, whether it's an individual trophy or a team trophy, and it really doesn't matter the sport, right? But when you look at the athletes, they may have different measures of success, right? They may not mind playing for a team that stinks, yet they are an individual achiever and are winning scoring titles, right? They may not mind never winning a championship as long as their bank account is getting filled, right? So that motivation is different. I can just tell you that in any sport, any professional sport now, free agency is something that owners and GMs have fought hard to do everything they can to prevent it. The NFL is ridiculous. They franchise tag a player to basically ensure that they can't go anywhere. Like they ensure that they're not able to get the free agency. Right, they do everything in their power to try and hold on to players, and so that free agency is coveted, and it gives the players an opportunity to kind of decide where it is that they want to go. So in Panarin's case, he took a look at Florida, and I got to Florida's not been bad. They have a good GM. They are up and coming, right?
Good.
And so that could have been a good option. Maybe he just didn't like the climate, right? Who knows? Mm-hmm. On the island, again, could have been the GM, could have been where Panarin saw himself fitting into the system, not necessarily the lineup. He may have been a first line guy, who knows? But he just maybe didn't see himself fitting in there. And he looked at New York, saw what they had going on there, liked the product that was being sold, and maybe he met a girl there. Who knows?
Right. Maybe he met two girls there.
Maybe he met a couple girls there. So you never know. But I got to tell you, again, with my experience in talking with professional hockey players, and again, I covered AHL, but I had NHL players make their way through the AHL. So I've watched these guys grow up. I've watched them go up, come down, and I got to tell you, they're motivated by a lot of different things. So where we might think that, hey man, that was a dumb decision to sign that contract with that team or to go there or whatever. It's the great thing about free agency is they can go where they feel they're going to be the best fit.
Yeah.
One of the other things too about Phil Kessel, when he was in Toronto, was mobbed by the media, mobbed. Every time they lost, Phil, why didn't you win? Why didn't you win? Why didn't you win? And he hated it. He went to Pittsburgh, and guess what? Yeah. You got Crosby and Malkin in front of him. So he doesn't have to be the guy in front of the camera, right? And so, again, there are some players that don't want to be the face of the franchise, despite how good they play. And so they go to a team where they don't have to worry about that. Yeah. So, it just depends,
I got you. I have the division standings up in front for the Eastern Conference right now.
Sure.
And, some things that just stand out as I glance through it, looking at the Atlantic Division. You look at a team like Detroit with a minus 24 differential, right?
Yep.
With 57 goals against. However, they have played more games than anyone else in the division. So you could say, okay, maybe they played more games, but they've played 15 games along with Toronto and Buffalo in that division as playing the most. However, they only have 9 points. And then you think, wow, that's terrible. But then there's one team more terrible than that, which is Ottawa, with only 7 points. So what the heck is going on in Ottawa? Obviously, you've had the mass exodus, you've had the purge, you've had, how long of a turnaround are we looking for a team like Ottawa? What?
Eugene Melnick he's crazy. He's certifiable. The guy is in legal trouble. He told the fan, he wrote letters to season ticket holders, basically threatening them
that he was going to pick up the team and move. Right. We're talking about a guy who was going to hire private investigators to go look after Matt Cook for slashing the heel of Carlson. Right. Like this is the guy's crazy. Right.
Yeah.
Why would you threaten your fans with moving if they don't show up? Like who does that? Right. There was a lot of dissension in the locker room. There was some stuff going on with somebody's fiance insulting someone's wife. That
was Hoffman's girlfriend and Erickson's wife.
Yeah, yep. So you had that. That is an organization. So you go back a couple years, right? They were one goal away from going to a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
One goal away, right?
Yep.
And they got hot at the right time. They weren't particularly good. They would have gotten blown out in the Stanley Cup final. It just would have happened. But they got hot at the right time. They gave Pittsburgh a run for its money, and that is just not a good organization. They haven't been a good organization. Melnick is a horrible owner. And so again, when you talk about that culture, we were talking about Panarin earlier. Talk about that culture. Like, who wants to go to Ottawa?
Yeah.
Who wants to go there? Like, nobody. And so you've either got to overpay, and if you have an owner who's in financial trouble, what player is going to go there looking for a contract that they aren't sure that they're going to get paid, right? Yeah. So that's what's going on there. I mean, they had an aging goaltender. They put all their money into or all their hopes into Craig Anderson, who again saw him in Norfolk here. He came through. He was a Chicago prospect. Loved the guy. That guy was never quit. Like really was happy for his success. But you put all you bet the house on him, and he was old. Yep. He was old, right? And you didn't bother putting anybody behind him.
Yep. And that's I didn't mean to get you worked up there, buddy. You all right?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
As we look at what's barely better than Detroit in the Atlantic is Tampa Bay. Now, in being at the Islander Tampa Bay game the other evening, last night actually.
Yep.
What surprised me about that team was how flat they looked. When you have a team that consists of guys like Braden Point with his speed, Kucherov with his just everything talent, Stamkos and Vasilevsky, you start to, let's remove the goalie and let's just go with Kucherov, Stamkos, and I'm going to put Braden Point in there because he stood out as one of the fastest guys on the ice. He's just quick. And especially after the season that they had last year, you're expecting guys to want to make they want the puck because they want to make something happen. And it's almost like the Michael Jordan syndrome. When Jordan was playing, he wanted the ball because not only did he know he could score, but he knew he would draw like 2 or 3 defenders and then he would dish it out to someone else to score. These guys don't want the puck. They're not. Everyone was kind of on the same. It looked like everyone was equally tranced on that team. They all moved the same pace. They all passed the same pace. They all went through their, strategy at the same pace. They all transitioned at the same pace. Like I felt like I was watching a bunch of lemmings. Seriously. And I'm not a Tampa Bay hater. I'm just saying the team did not look like they had a spark, like they had a fire. And then listening to John Cooper afterwards in like the post game, he's saying, "Oh, I thought we played an okay game. I just thought that the puck bounced right for the Islanders, and the Islanders had they just finished their opportunities, and we just didn't, and that happens on some nights, and I just hope the luck turns around for us." Now, if I'm a Tampa Bay fan and I hear that sort of analysis coming out of my coach, I'd be scared out of my pants, because what the Islanders did was they had scoring throughout all their lines, including their defensemen firing shots at will, with some of the shots going in, especially from Pulock, right? So But you look at how the Islanders played Tampa Bay, and I think the Trotz system was in full effect, which was they kept in the Islanders zone, defensive zone, they kept Tampa Bay to the very perimeter. So any shots Tampa Bay needed to take, they took from a distance, and it was very easy for Grice to play, right? Which is a very easy system for any goalie to play when you're looking at shots that are coming in. And the only way that the other team can score is just by a screen or a deflection or something. And that's exactly how one of the goals were scored last night. I think it was Yanni Gord who scored. He was in the slot, but deep, at a distance out in the slot, almost by the blue line. And he just flicked one at the goal, and Grice was completely screened, and it just went right over his shoulder. It wasn't even a hard shot. It was like a mediocre shot, and it just kind of fluttered past him. Tampa Bay wasn't able to create any opportunities up close. They just were a mess in their own zone. The Islanders had plenty of opportunities from all different facets of the offensive zone in front of Vasilevsky, and it was once again, as being a hockey fan, it was almost a little depressing to watch, knowing the season they had last year and knowing the players that are on that team and what you should be expecting from those players. Do you know how many people probably picked Kucherov number one in the fantasy this year, and they're probably like, crap? That's like me last year with Draisaitl. I remember I had Draisaitl, I had Laine over the last 2 years as my number one picks. I think it was Laine last year and then Draisaitl, and they both did terrible for me in those 1 years. Now coming back, and these guys, it seems like they're just off, really off.
So it's interesting about John Cooper, and again, it's funny. So I hate to say, once again, I had John Cooper here in Norfolk. So John Cooper has won at every level he's coached at. He's won the championship, to include AHL championship here in Norfolk. The year that the Admirals won the Calder Cup, they also won 28 straight games to end the season.
Wow.
Yeah, so 28 straight games. It's the North American Professional Hockey League record. So that's NHL, AHL, ECHL, 28 straight. And it's interesting because, I got to know John Cooper very well, not on a personal level, but on a professional one, because I covered the Admirals for all the years that he was the coach here. I will tell you that the year that they won the Calder Cup, there was not a player on that team that would not have taken a bullet for him, charged a hill. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
They all bought into his system. So the interesting thing with John Cooper is that he has won at every level, but he has not lost at every level.
Right.
And I think his coaching certainly was one of the biggest reasons why the Admirals won. His coaching was one of the biggest, but not necessarily the biggest, but one of the biggest reasons why Tampa almost made it to the Cup final. Right? They made it to
Right.
the Eastern Conference Championships. But I don't know. And again, I haven't talked to him in a couple years, but I'm disappointed in that roster too. So of the players that are currently on the roster, Andre Palat, Tyler Johnson, Alex Killorn, I watched those guys here in Norfolk. I watched other guys who were in the system make their way out, but I watched these guys, and so it's I'm right there with you. It's disappointing as a hockey fan because John Cooper is a winner. But you have Stamkos, who's 5 goals, 8 assists. Kucherov, 4 goals, 7 assists. There's not a lot going on with that roster, and so you
think somebody would step up? I'm surprised, no. and like a guy like Yanni Gord who finished off the season. I remember last year he was actually scratched. He was a healthy scratch for some games going last season. So was Tyler Johnson.
Yep.
These two guys have proven to be so erratic. Yanni Gord started off last year and very strong, and then he petered out. Tyler Johnson was just up and down the whole season. And then I feel like the rest of the team kind of carried them. And I don't know what kind of depth they have through their farm teams and so on, but you'd like to think that when you see such inconsistency, that can be replaced with consistency, or someone who's going to be able to produce a bit more than what they were producing in the second half of last season. But when you look at the top line and you have Stamkos and Kucherov on the top line, and then they have Volkov, who's playing left wing for them. But then the second line of Palat, Point, and Tyler Johnson, I don't know. I don't see strength in some of these lines. It doesn't, and I have the lines up on the screen right now. Even with the defensive pairings, I maybe Sergachev and Shattenkirk on the second pair, second defensive line, McDonough and Cernak. I don't know. I don't see proven chemistry among these lines. It looks like they're kind of they took some darts, threw it at the board, and said, okay, these are our lines. Other than that top line, so even with the top line, you only got the two guys. I mean, Volkov is unproven, and not taking anything away from them. It's more of a chemistry issue than anything else.
So, it's interesting. Stevie Yzerman left, right? He left the team. He's responsible for the basic makeup of the team and its current form. He was the GM that was there when they went to the Eastern Conference.
And not to interrupt you, and as I scrolled through the lines, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Injuries that have affected the last few games: Patrick Maroon and Victor Hedman, obviously two big defensemen.
Maroon, he's a winger. He had to beg St. Louis to take him. He just came off winning a cup.
I'm sorry, Hedman and as a defenseman, missing a solid defenseman there.
Yes. No, so. but again, I think what you have is a locker room that knows it can win and plays like it knows it can win, so it's not hungry. And I think that is really the attitude that's permeated throughout the lineup from top to bottom. So when your veterans who are there are used to being able to run up the score, are used to knowing that they're going to win. They got Vasilevsky back there, so they don't really have to play as hard. They have Stamkos, who, his one-timer from the face-off circle is usually going to go in. So, we don't really have to, so when you get that attitude, that can cripple a team, and it's difficult for a coach to break a team out of that funk and really get them playing the right way. And sometimes it takes a GM to come in and make some trades. To really shake things up and let people know. And sometimes it's, you have to fire a coach. And I think if the Lightning underperform this year, I don't think John Cooper is going to be there next year. And it's I hate to say it, because again, I talk with this man every weekend, multiple times a weekend. I got an insight into the way that he played, or the way that he coaches, the way that his players thought of him, and the way that they bought into his system. He's an extremely good coach. And but you sometimes you just get to a point where you've lost a locker room because they think they know better, or they think they can play better, or how many times have you seen a team where they may be down 2-1 or 3-1, and they're kind of flat, but then in the last 5 minutes of a game, all of a sudden, holy crap, where was this team? Right? Like they're holding on to the puck for minutes at a time, and they're going crazy. And so that's a team that they have confidence that they can win, but that confidence overtakes their level of play. So I think that's what Tampa's problem is. I think they just feel like they can win, and that's just what they're going to do, and that's why they play the way they do.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a pretty significant amount of, we could probably discuss today's news for another 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I think to wrap up for today, I think that's kind of a decent story to kind of fade out on and pick up and see what happens for the remainder of the weekend here, and maybe resume our conversation and reviews on Monday the 4th. So we can shoot for something like that, and hopefully come in for another session.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be good if you can do some research, learn how to spell hockey. That way I don't feel like I'm carrying this whole thing.
What are you talking about?
I mean, I pretty much taught you everything you know, so it would be
All
good.
right.
It'd be good
All
for
right,
you.
so we're going to say goodbye to the viewers now.
I knew that was going to happen.
All right.
Yeah. So
All right.
no, it's been good. I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, it's been good. The only thing I will say is to end this is that all games are important. Never let anybody tell you that games in October and November are not important, because when that Christmas break hits,
Yeah.
percentages say that the teams that are in playoff positions at the Christmas break,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so every point counts, especially in those divisions that are tight. And yeah, so it's not cool when teams can't score, aren't winning. Something's got to happen now. So.
All right. Don't go anywhere, but we're going to say goodbye to the viewers. So I hope everyone has a good night. Scotty,
Yep.
say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.